I started with some red oak that I had. It's rough sawn lumber, and I needed to get it into more manageable pieces. So I started on the table saw, ripped them down to approximate widths, and then approximate lengths were done on the miter saw. I'm building this for my son, who just moved into a house. He actually bought it, and I thought this would be a nice housewarming gift for him. He needs some extra space. This board was very out of square, and I needed to cut a straight edge on it. So I screwed this board that I knew was straight onto it, and then put that board up against the fence as I ran it through the table saw to get a straight edge. I got this planer just a week or two ago, so this is one of the first times using it. And I don't have a joiner, so I used a sled to get the first side. After I got both sides nice and smooth, I squared them up, and here I'm putting a mortise of sorts onto these pieces to accept a stretcher that will go across both the front and on the back side. This is the stretcher, so I'm creating a tenon on here. So we've got a dado blade removing material on both sides. And then, instead of squaring up the mortise, I decided to just round over this bottom part of the tenon. For me, this works pretty well. And the back panel needed to accept a 1/4 inch piece of oak plywood, so I'm creating that groove here. And then, of course, some sanding before glue up. That's a little bit easier to do it this way. So there's that stretcher that goes into that groove that I created earlier. And then the plywood slips into that other groove that I created. And I didn't have clamps big enough, so I used this clamp. It worked pretty well. Band clamp is words I was looking for. This 3/4 inch oak I cut here was the bottom and the two sides. And then I put a dado into the bottom for those sides to sit in. This is a piece of oak that I'm just creating a groove in, and I use that to cover the ends, sort of like a breadboard, just to protect it a little better. So here's the glue up. That's the bottom piece, and now one of the sides. There's the other side. And I glued and I screwed them from the bottom, and then I actually screwed down through the top and from the back as well. Later I take care of those holes. But here's a little trick. I've got finish nails here I'm using, and I need to drill some pilot holes. So I cut off the head on one of the nails and then put it into the drill, and I can use that nail to drill some holes. Put a little glue on and then hammer in that nail. Should have been using a smaller hammer there, so I switched. This worked easier. Less likely to bend over the nails that way. Then I put in the drawer slides. And here's one of the drawers getting put in. Now I'm marking for some shelves on the edge. And I didn't like the way the bottom shelf looked, so I put a solid piece of oak on that bottom as well. And these are some cleats that I'm gluing and screwing into the sides. And then I glue the shelves right directly to these cleats. These top supports here are twofold. One to strengthen the box, and the other one gives me a place to screw up into the 1.5 inch thick top that I'll be putting on. And here I'm creating a groove by drilling some holes in there and then reaming it out with the drill bit. This allows for expansion and contraction of that top. I put some casters on the bottom. 2 of them are locking casters. They're all swivel casters. And then I needed to cut the top, as it was 5 feet long, and I only needed it to be 3 feet long. This is a low angle block plane that I'm using to create a chamfer on the edges. And now I'm going to take care of those screw holes that I have on the face and back frames by creating these plugs. Just a little dab of glue, and then I hammered those in, trying to keep the grain oriented with the grain of the wood that I'm putting it into. I use this little block of wood as a guide to mark where I'm going to drill some holes here. Did that on both sides. And I drilled these holes, not all the way through, only about a 1/2 inch deep. And this is for a brass rod that I can stick in one side and then bend and then stick it into the other hole. And this is to help prevent any cans or whatever he's going to have on these shelves from falling off. Then I finished this with a mixture of boiled linseed oil, mineral spirits, and polyurethane. The doors I bought simply because I ran out of my oak that I was using, and it was just easier to buy the doors. This is mineral oil for the top. And then I put the hinges on, and I could use that same little block of wood as a spacer. Always drill pilot holes for these, especially in oak. It's such a hard wood. The handles needed holes drilled 3 inches apart all the way through the doors. And then once you place them in, you actually screw them from the back side. So then I put the top on and then screwed up from the bottom after drilling some pilot holes. And it's done. I like how there are shelves on the sides for this one, so there's some easy access, and then 2 pull-out drawers on the inside. That way, again, you can get to those back areas pretty easily. He wanted a larger area on the bottom there for some pots and pans and such. But I thought it turned out pretty nice. Thanks for watching. I appreciate the support.